Max Ledoux, Tuftonboro Corner. I've been to almost every single budget committee meeting in the last 2 years. And in general, every single budget that comes before them that's sent to them from the selectmen, the way it works, the selectmen send them a proposed budget, they vote on it. Almost every single, certainly this year, almost every single budget passed with probably 5, 6 out of 7 votes. Every single one. So my question is, Helen, when did you try to rein in spending? Did you vote against anything?
I believe I did vote against some things, but I also feel that the department heads and the selectmen were very careful in putting out a budget that did not overspend in any areas. I feel that the town is very well run, and I feel that the budgets are very well stewarded, and that they are very well put together.
Okay, any other questions? There being none, thank you three for coming this evening and for sharing your thoughts with us. Next, we have the 2 candidates for selectmen, Lloyd Wood and Bob McWhirter. Again, by drawing, Lloyd will be speaking first.
Good evening. First of all, I hope Dan's doing well. Some of us have been through that surgery, and we just want him back on the beam as quick as possible. And hope he gets better in time for town meeting without crutches. I'm Lloyd Wood, and I'm running for selectman. I'm asking to vote for me again. I was born in Tuftonboro. When I'm asked, have I lived here all my life? I give the answer, not yet. I sit here, I went to school here in this school, and I can remember about 18 years ago, my brother's boy was 5 years old, and they were moving back to Tuftonboro, and he goes, Lloyd, my dad says that you and he and your brother went to Tuftonboro Central School. I said, yeah, that's right. He says that when you went to school here, there were 4 classrooms. And I said, yeah, that's right. You visited the other day. What do you think? And he goes, just a little cherub creature, goes, well, in case you haven't been there recently, they've divided those rooms up a whole bunch of times. I went to Kingswood, graduated in 1966, went to UNH, started out in engineering, ended up in political science, government, had a chance to work in public safety for a career in a number of different areas. About 10 years in 1980, I decided to go for a master's degree. And the best advice my chief gave me, he says, don't major in criminal justice, minor in it. Major in public administration. If you can manage money and manage people, you can work in the private or the public sector. Best advice he ever gave me. Thoroughly enjoyed it. I graduated with a master's degree in public administration. My family has served the public. I've served the public. This is a great town. It's where my friends and family are. That's why I moved back here. I've been involved in a number of committees with the town, in a number of functions. Every day, it's nice to see smiling faces, kids. There's so many great days here in Tuftonboro. I was on the budget committee for 17 years, chairman for 3. I was on the capital improvement committee. I've worked on a number of other committees in town. I continue to work on committees in the area, like the TAC committee, the Technical Committee of the Lakes Region Planning. They are a tremendous resource. I'm rather fortunate. Not only have I worked for the town, I've worked for the county, and I worked for the school district. A couple of things I'd like to point out, if I could. Budgets. I'm here to tell you I'll continue to what I've done in the past. Every single bill that comes across the desk gets read by me. I've attended every single meeting, haven't missed a one. I listen, and if I don't know something, I research it and go get the answer. If anybody, and several people here over the years have asked me questions, and I've gone and researched it, and have told them what I have found out. Budgeting is very, very difficult. Let's talk about assessments. Assessments are based upon real estate values. They're set by the state of New Hampshire. We went through some reassessments in the last decade. Some lakefront property went up, and people were very happy about it. Some backland went down, they were very happy about it. That is determined by the state of New Hampshire. When it comes to budgets, it's rather interesting. The state of New Hampshire last year passed on to our school district, our county, our town, and all the other towns and cities in the state, $19 million in just retirement costs. Jack mentioned those individuals in the legislature have not been our friend. And I'm not afraid to speak to one of them at a time over coffee and mentioning that they need to think of the big picture. We have people that came to work in Tufton Borough and the school district and the county, and the agreement was, this is what your retirement package is. For example, fire and police don't pay into Social Security. Nothing. And back then, what the government paid was, their retirement was less than if they were paying Social Security. That's changed. And that's a challenge for the people in the town hall. Let's talk about budgets. How many grants does the town of Tufton Borough get? Milfoil just had to redo the heating and ventilation system in the town hall and got a $2,800 grant there. Electricity, Lakes Region Planning worked on it, and we signed a new deal. It looks like we're going to save an estimated $1,000 there. You know, $1,000 here and $2,800 there adds up. That's how you and I operate our personal lives. We don't make it all up in one day or 1 week. It's like dieting. We work at it every single day. Up at the transfer station, the Clay Gallagher has only 2 days to take pictures, go on the computer, and get bids for the recycling. Time Warner put him off 50 times in 2 years. Wouldn't return his phone calls. And then when they did get him back, it's going to cost us $50,000 to put the engine put the line in, and it's going to cost $500 a month for the computer service. Spectrum came in, and the president of Spectrum went to bat for us. He sent the guy down. I met with him and Clay, and he said, first of all, the president said to put the line in is $11,322, and we're to deduct $5,000 off. So it's $6,322. Clay then asked, we currently, through our telephone carrier, paying $135 for phone service, and it's intermittent. We got sold a bill of goods years ago. what can you do for us? Well, this is what it would cost. And Clay said, what would it cost to bundle 3 services? Computer service, high-speed internet, telephone, and audiovisual. He said, we can bundle those 3 services for $3 less than what you're paying for telephone right now. I'll give Clay all the credit, and the president of Spectrum. He saved you taxpayers a hunk of money. They just put the poll in the other day. They said service is going to be in a month. Lane Pond Road. Years ago, it was a $485,000, 22-foot wide bridge project if we could get the government to support it. We put it out to bid for $160,000. It came back at $147,000. The neighbors down there like it. The DES says it's cured many of the problems with the lake, with Mirror Lake. There's a perch beach there now that are used by our kids. You know, boats, cars were backing, pickup trucks were backing out to their mufflers submerged to unload their boats. Guess what? We have a local contractor that this spring is going to do the ramp over on 109. The engineers from the state said that was a $35,000 project. He's going to do it for less than $10,000. We all save money, don't we? That's your money in your pocket. 75% of our taxes come from people who own waterfront property in this town. That's why you and I are able to live here. What do they ask for? Some docks and ramps and emergency services. Go down to Lake Road, a new ramp there, and it really got the people working together. Dave Ladd and River Reach got together and fixed their docks down there, and Tuftonboro owns 1/2 of one of the ramps, and we put in just over $1,000 to work with them. They're all repaired. A landowner 2 houses down put in new docks and did dredging, and 5 families from Melvin Village went out along Lake Road and cut the bushes, and there's a bench out there that people had forgot that was there. I live within sight of that, and there isn't a week goes by that I don't see a grandfather with his kids, his grandchildren fishing, or people putting boats in, or whatnot.
Lloyd, I'm going to ask you to come to a conclusion here.
Okay. I'm going to stop and let someone else talk. Thank you.
We have Bob Porter as well.
Thank you. My name is Bob McWhorter, for those of you who don't know me. I live in Melvin Village with my beautiful wife, Darlene, and our golden retriever now, Tessa. And we've lived in Melvin for the last 10 years, but I've been coming up to the lake for over 50 years. Down in Chase Point is where I grew up, summers and weekends and any chance I got. So like Tom, it was a lifelong dream for me to be able to live up here. I'm very pleased to be here and live here in Tuftonboro. It's a wonderful town, very beautiful. I have a Bachelor of Science degree in Criminal Justice from Northeastern University, and some of that I used working in high tech for digital equipment, Hewlett Packard, and I ended up being a facilities manager, security manager, safety manager. And I also have a master's degree in business administration. Thanks to Digital Equipment Corporation. Right now, I work for Fairpoint. I've been a consultant, and right now I have my own home inspection business, which I work at full time. So I'm not yet retired. I haven't figured that out. So I certainly have a vested interest in our taxes and that kind of thing. For me, just about everything that happens in town related to town operations revolves around the budget. For me, my concern is that the budget has continued to escalate. And this year, again, it's up 4%. It's actually probably going to be up more if we vote in all the warrant articles. Because the money that it cost us when we vote for a warrant article ends up in the next year's operating budget oftentimes. So the $3,700,000 that the Budget Committee has put forward this year is going to increase if we approve all the budgeted items. And that's going to bring it up to $4 million. So for me, looking at the budget, figuring out how to keep the budget as low as possible, and I believe that you can always, it's easy to raise the budget, that's easy. It's more difficult to try and figure out how you can reduce expense, not cut. And it can be done. Our neighbors in Wolfboro, for the last 2 years, it's been very prevalent in the paper. For the last 2 years, the Board of Selectmen down there have put forward budgets, operating budgets, that are level. At least that's the word that went out. So it can be done. So for me, some of the hot buttons around what we spend or how we spend it center around the budget itself, but in particular, one of the things that I see as a roadblock is getting something done with the police facility. And this year, I'm very excited that the selectmen collectively have decided to spend some money on a study for roads. Because I believe that, I could stand here and say I'm not gonna support any increases in the budget. I don't know that that's practical. I anticipate some more questions about that. But we've spent the same amount of money on road paving for the last X amount of years, for 10 years that I've been here. It's been $185,000. Now we take some money out of the operating budget and add it to that and make believe that we're spending more money when we're probably not really spending more money. So I'm very supportive of the study that I think is included in the budget on the roads. And the other major issue that needs to be done is we need to get the master plan updated. I don't understand how we can spend over $4 million that's looking like this year without tying that spending into an updated master plan. And for me, in a nutshell, those are my priorities and concerns. Thank you.
Okay, I'd like now to open the floor to questions for either Lloyd or Bob, for both. Bob?
Question for the selectmen. In terms of an inflationary economy and the outside forces that come in from state, county, et cetera, how can you look at the budget for Tufton Borough in terms of controlling costs and either flatlining or whatever you may want to call it, when you're up against inflation and you've already created the asset that you have here, which is going to be created from out and kept up with outside forces? How is it possible that you could ever even consider a tax that wouldn't increase? Economically, I can't see how that's possible.
Did everybody hear the question? Bob, if I could rephrase what you said, you wanted to know
I'm
how
just
is it that
curious.
you have a level budget from one year to
Well,
the next, given the...
I mean, everybody
inflation?
is obviously interested in lowering taxes. I mean, you hear that wherever you go. The only way you can lower taxes in an increasing economy and inflation is to cut services. I guess what I'm asking, what services would you cut to keep keep taxes not increasing over the next couple of years.
Okay, and your question was for either
Either,
Bob or
yeah,
Lloyd?
yeah, for a response from either.
Bob?
So, I'm not gonna say I would flatline the budget. I don't know if that's kind of what you're talking, I know that was one of the questions. So I would never sign up for that. And the reason I wouldn't sign up for that is because of what you're alluding to, is that there are so many expenses that we can't control. I certainly would commit to not increasing spending the best we could. But as I thought about Molly's question and think about your question and talk about inflation, a lot of that work gets done in the CIP with some of those charts and the guesstimates, but they're helping us see where things potentially are going. But I believe the town budget is what, maybe 25% of, 25-30% of our tax rate, tax burden. And then we have the county, and then, no offense, Jack, but the school is the biggest chunk of tax burden that we have. And we're fortunate that we have someone local like Jack down advocating for us, but it's one of those areas that, I guess when I complain about things or point things out, and anybody does, I very rarely hear anybody saying, well, I'm on my way over to the county to talk to those guys, and those folks about what's going on, down to see Jack's crew. So around that, trying to keep the tax rate, I think is what we're talking about, as level or even reduce it. I think maybe as an elected official, we might find it necessary to encourage more people to participate in those kinds of things. So, and as far as the impact on the total tax rate, the town stuff is 25-30%. So doesn't mean we shouldn't work on it. And I'm concerned about it. If we approve most of the warrant articles coming up before us, if you just take what they're gonna cost and plug them into that 3.7 number, we're gonna be up over $4 million. And it's not like we can look at the budget and go, oh gee, you know, it was up 10 grand last year and 20 grand and 30 grand. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars in increases over a 5-year period, and if you go into a 10-year period, I'm sure it's closer to $1 million.
This last year, and I'm gonna give credit to other people, they're part of the team. Chip Albee, who has expertise in the benefits. If you'll notice, it's a $50,000 reduction in this year's budget. That's savings to you and you and you. Adam Thompson has worked for years. Our radios in the fire and police suck. Officers are up in Tufton Borough Corner getting beat up, and the dispatch center can't hear them. CIP committee, up until this year, there was a $180,000 item. Am I correct, Helen? Adam Thompson was the first one to come in and says, we got the county to write a grant. He lived it. He saved you folks $180,000. Cut, not even asked for it. Jack Widmer, all the years that he's been with the school. The first thing is, the additions that were, improvements that were down there were 2 grants where the towns only have to pay 50% and 55%. Last 2 grants that the state funded, the school and the VOTEC. Have you been down there? We only pay 11 cents on the dollar. The school district last year is the only district ever to go to the bond bank and renegotiate. It works out to the town of Tuftonboro next year will save $9,000. We go over and talk to the people in the county, since the new managers got it straightened around. Remember a couple of years ago, when their tax rate to our town went up 31 cents 2 years in a row? Didn't go up this year. The business manager over there that we talk to and meet with, he's doing his job. You know, there are some people out there that have saved you money this year. Is it enough? I'm willing to work harder. Thank you.
Any other questions? Chris?
Can either one of you explain to me the undesignated fund balance? Is that money that was originally raised from taxes? And was some of that used this year to offset the tax rate?
Did everyone hear the question?
Can you, I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear it.
Chris's question was,
Explain the undesignated fund balance. Where does that money come from? Was it raised from taxes? And if so, was some of that used this year to offset our tax rate, the town tax rate? I'm not talking about the county, I'm not talking about the school, because those are different items. But can you explain to me about the undesignated fund balance? Because I guess I need a little clarification when, for example, the money to not come from taxes, they might use money from the undesignated fund balance. Was that money originally raised from taxes, or where did that money come from?
The undesignated fund balance is an accounting term developed by the Department of Revenue. You will not find it in any RSA or any law. This year, we had right around $90,000 that was not used in the operating budget. DRA takes that aside and puts it in that fund balance. DRA has rulings that they recommend you have between certain percentages. There's one that's figured on what your expenditures are, and I think it's 14 to 17%, and then there's another one that it can be upon operating budget. That $90,000 was raised by taxes this last year. DRA puts it in the fund balance.
I'm sorry, what's DRA?
Department of Revenue
Is that a
Administration.
state department?
Yes. When the state gets all the information and says this is what your costs will be, it usually comes out October, November. The town, the selectmen, can say, well, we'd like to reduce some of the taxes, the tax rate in the town. Last year, the Board of Selectmen voted to put, I think it was $350,000. Some years it's been $250,000. I'd have to check my notes to see what it's been, in the last 20 years. It's confusing. It's difficult for people who aren't accountants to wrap their hands around it. I had to study it and have it explained to me and whatnot. The comment is, well, it's not tax dollars. Well, it was raised by taxes someplace. The confusing thing is, DRA from time to time, when we do warrant articles, puts in not money, when it comes out of the fund balance, not raised by taxes. What they should say, in my opinion, is not currently needed to be raised from this year's taxes. And that's where, there's some misunderstanding and whatever. Now, the debate of how much do you have there, that's a raging debate and everybody has an opinion. What happened a few years ago is, and I'll pass on to Chip Albee, he was a commissioner of the year, and he saved them about, in my opinion, I think it was $2.5 to $3.5 million on the new state-of-the-art nursing home. I have family members that are there, or have been there, it's great. Guess what? What happened to that money? Well, between the commissioners and how the county ran things and how they figured things, it got spent. And if you notice that there was a lot of controversy the last couple of years. From my observation, that's been sorted out. Does that answer your question?
Thank you, Lloyd. Bob?
So, for me, the undesignated fund balance isn't fuzzy. From what I know, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's, and Lloyd explained most of it, but every year, since I've been involved in either budget committee or as a citizen, we tend, as a community, to over-budget what we need to spend. And we've done that to the tune of 150,000 on average. This year, it's 90-something. So one of my concerns while I was on the budget committee was, wait a minute, we didn't spend that much last year. Why are we spending or budgeting the same and putting it on the books? And every year, we end up with a surplus. And some would argue that that's a good thing in case something bad happens. I counter that by saying if something bad happens, we can go to the Superior Court and get into that undesignated fund balance. So we always have that option to go do that. So you have that over budgeting and underspending on a consistent basis. And then I believe things like current use taxes. If somebody has property in current use and they haven't had to pay taxes on that property for X amount of years, and the property gets sold, they're liable for those taxes. And it's somewhat of a windfall to the town that ends up in the undesignated fund balance as revenue. So my biggest issue with the undesignated fund balance, although it's good to have money in the bank, and I would simply rely on a guy like Jack to say, you know, based on what the state recommends and your financial management advice, what should we keep on hand? And I'm not quite sure what the recommended number is by the state. Since I've been around, it's been $1 million, $1.2 million, $1.4 million, and I think it's down below $1 million now. And the concern I have with the undesignated fund balance is it's a cushion for us to be able to spend more money, because we can always fall back on, the selectmen can fall back on that undesignated fund balance and say, okay, let's keep the town tax as low as we can, because if we don't dip into that, the town tax rate is it's gonna go up and people won't like that. So when I think about just this last year, where the selectmen took $350,000 from the undesignated